Hey there everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Battlefield Breakdown, a brand new series where I, SkyllianBlitz, give a quick review of a weapon, including its strengths and weaknesses, and then attempt to give some good situations where the item might be useful and some situations where it might be a hindrance instead. I'll be covering not only primary and secondary weapons, but also gadget roundups and map-specific tips. On this premiere episode of Battlefield Breakdown, we'll be covering the ACW-R, also known as the ACR or Adaptive Combat Rifle. Some quick info about the gun for gun nerds or anyone else that's interested. The original name of the rifle was the Masada, and it was developed by Magpul Industries until the design for the weapon was purchased by Bushmaster, renamed the ACR, modified a bit, and entered into the US Army's individual carbine competition, where it is currently a finalist with the possibility of replacing the M4 carbine as the standard carbine for the US Army. While it's normally chambered with the standard NATO 5.56 round and STANAG magazines, the Battlefield 3 version is actually chambered with a slightly larger 6.5mm Grendel cartridge. On first glance, the Battlefield 3 version of the ACR seems like a very typical M4 style carbine. It has a very fast 850 rounds per minute, a quick 1.85 second reload with a round remaining, a low bullet spread, and very manageable recoil. When you open up the Synthic stat sheets, however, it starts to tell a whole different story. What does this mean? Well, the ACR has a completely different damage range than not only every other carbine, but every other gun in the entire game. All of the carbines minus the SCAR-H deal a maximum of 25 damage, and it scales down to a minimum of 14.3 damage at longer range. The ACR, however, deals a maximum of only 20 damage, but it scales down to only 16.7 damage at range. This also gives the ACR the smallest damage range of any gun in the game. While a 5 damage difference may not seem like much, once you start to get down to brass tacks and open up the damage charts, it makes a gigantic difference. Up close, it's the difference between a 4-shot kill and a 5-shot kill, and it really doesn't start to outdamage the other carbines until you're about 37 meters out from your target. This issue is exacerbated even further when you add a heavy barrel to the mix. Once you have the H-bar equipped, the ACR doesn't begin to outdamage the other carbines until a whopping 54 meters. Put plainly, the ACR falls too short in the damage department to be a viable choice for most close to mid-range firefights where the other carbines excel. You can never really be sure when an enemy is going to come around the corner and start spraying at you, and his gun is just going to do more damage than yours most of the time, and it's also likely going to have more ammunition to fire before it runs dry. The ACR is not necessarily a bad gun though, and it certainly has a place in the game for those who choose to use it. If you can manage to keep yourself at range for most of your firefights, the ACR is a solid weapon. Its high rate of fire, combined with low recoil, will allow you to put more shots on target at range, letting you get those ranged kills even despite the lower damage. The ACR is a very serviceable weapon for defending the hilltop capture point on Caspian border, or while traveling from point to point on Karg Island or Operation Firestorm. However, if you're in a map where close combat is the norm, like Grand Bazaar, Operation Metro, or any of the close quarters expansion maps, you'd be much better served by using a gun that deals the higher close range damage to ensure that it takes less rounds to drop your enemy. I simply cannot recommend trying to put a laser sight on the ACR to make it a close range gun. There are weapons far better suited to that role in the engineer class. As far as my preferred attachments for the weapon, I'd say that you can't go wrong with the Cobra sight or optic of your choice, an empty underbarrel, and the heavy barrel. The flash suppressor isn't needed as the ACR already has extremely low vertical recoil, and the laser sight, as I already mentioned, doesn't really play to the gun's strengths. The one attachment that I absolutely do not recommend under any circumstance is the foregrip. The weapon has a very manageable side-to-side recoil of 0.1 left and 0.3 right, and the foregrip increases the ACR's aim bullet spread significantly, thereby neutering the advantage that the weapon gives you for ranged combat. Another attachment that works to the ACR's strengths would be the suppressor. While the suppressor will decrease the muzzle velocity, or the speed at which the bullet travels, and reduce the range at which the weapon reaches its minimum damage, the higher minimum damage of the ACR make it a good candidate, since compared to the other carbines, it'll still end up doing more damage at longer ranges while still keeping you off the minimap when firing. At the end of the day though, the unfortunate truth is that the ACR is outclassed or matched in all meaningful stats by the current best all-around carbine, the M4A1. As a matter of fact, with the heavy barrel on both weapons, the M4A1 even beats out the ACR in scoped bullet spread, the one thing that the ACR seemed to have going for it besides its slightly faster rate of fire. If you want to use the ACR though, then I say go for it. Just be aware that unless you're at long range, you're going to be doing less damage with it than you would with any other engineer weapon. That certainly hasn't stopped me from using it though. As of my current battle log stats, the ACR is my most used out of any weapon, despite its limitations. It may be that I'm just a sucker for American-made rifles. That about wraps up the first edition of Battlefield Breakdown. Thanks very much for watching, everyone. If you have any comments, opinions, or just want to leave criticism or praise, drop a comment in the comment box below, and stay tuned for more game coverage from Blitz Gaming. See you later, guys.